Welcome back to the show, everybody. Take a look at the numbers while we run the headlines here. We got, why do banks prefer Ripple over Bitcoin? Well, we're going to get into it. And I believe Ashish Burl is going to give us some of those facts. FedNow and the US CBDC delay. We've got something to consider on that front. It may be better than you think. Former Ripple employee tells us what the flip to switch is going to look like. And I believe Gary Gensler does too. And we're also going to talk about, could the recent redactions in the Ripple filing in the SEC versus Ripple point to secret pre-allocated XRP contracts? Oh, we got that and so much more. Somebody roll that beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. You can follow us on TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook at the top of the screen for exclusive content. Right here, we're at market cap $1.063 trillion. Shout out to CoinPetrica. Make sure you download that app. Look at the numbers right now. We're seeing this on the last 24 hours, and on the 7-day, it looks pretty rough. I got to be honest, for the crypto space. Bitcoin right now, 21,300. Ethereum, 1,600 plus. It was almost 1,800 or slightly over just a day or two ago. XRP at the number 7 spot at 34 cents. Let's take a look at this, ladies and gentlemen. It is a reminder right now. Don't mess around. Normally $10,000 minimum for Link 2 private investing made simple at link2.com. The link right here on Twitter or underneath my video. Do not mess around. If you're already a member of Link 2 or whether you want to join, click the link to make sure you get the best deal possible right here for this weekend. It ends Sunday at midnight Pacific time. And I want you to think about this for a second. Think about Ripple going public. Think about Ripple getting a settlement. Think about how long it would take for the window for private equity of Ripple to slam shut if you don't have that opportunity. Unbelievable. So many other great products as well. Make sure you check them all out. Right here, we see the ETH merge to 2.0 is approaching. Mike Alfred says here, I've been following Ethereum closely. Vitalik and the early insiders continue to change the rules and modify the code. Now some are threatening to abandon the project altogether in the face of government intervention. I'm not waiting any longer. Today, I am selling all my ETH. You know, this is not financial advice from me, him, or anyone else for any of my videos, but I must say, you know, that is quite compelling right there to hear someone saying that. I know a lot of people are doing the opposite, hoping that the merge will go well and trying to, you know, buy the rumor, sell the news, right, kind of thing. So we'll keep an eye on what comes out of that. It is a lot of mixed signals so far going up to the merge, which is supposed to happen September 15th and 16th. So we'll keep an eye on it. This here from Nathan Price, give him a follow. How the banks look at Ripple. Do they care if Ripple and XRP holders get rich? Listen, first of all, this is Robert Jan Vorlik, and forgive me, Robert, if I've said your name wrong, integrator of payments, cards, and digital banks, or digital bank, in a digital bank. So look at here. I want to go back to the first piece really quickly. I won't take long on this, but he basically puts a little PowerPoint together and says, short introduction to who Robert is. He says, independent consultant since 2000. He's worked for tier 1, 2, 3 banks in the Netherlands and several payment service providers and corporates. Operated in technical business risk roles, speaker about Bitcoin for tier 1 bank Accenture, EMA region, right? And Enigma Payments Consulting. Became interested in cryptocurrencies, realized that cryptocurrencies are by far the most interesting innovation in payments in decades. My first interest was merely in Bitcoin. Working with tier 1 banks, I noticed their interest in Ripple. He goes on to say Ripple Global Payment System Network created and maintained by Ripple Labs, built upon distributed open source internet protocol, SMTP, HTTP for payments, and a consensus ledger. I love that he makes that reference because I've made that same reference a lot. I feel it is such a foundational layer for payments. It is like the equivalent of the foundational layer for HTTP or SMTP for email and websites. The only asset in Ripple Network, native currency called XRP. We're going to hear from Ashish Burley in just a second, and we all know the different deals about it. But he says in this PowerPoint, he goes over all the advantages that Ripple is suited for the banks and payment system. He says, basically, do banks care that Ripple Labs and a few investors will become very rich if the price of XRP rises? He says no, right? And then he says banks like a stable rising price of XRP. RL have a really huge bazooka to countermeasure any unwanted price increase or price drop of XRP in the market. RL, which I guess is Ripple Labs, will not offend their clients' banks by going against their requests in monetary policy. And there was one more thing I wanted to highlight here. How are banks looking at this? And basically here, worries for banks are still, is it really safe? Technical barriers like the size and performance of the ledger, no central supervision of the gateways. For some, they might go bankrupt. It's worried or concerns here. First mover has limited global coverage, integration with their payments platform. They have already heavily invested last year's local regulation on the use of currency. And we know local regulations were globally and locally are an issue broadly. But look, I think the biggest thing you could add to this list that isn't on it, because this was done, I believe, before the case, and this is Robert's information right here, is simply that we don't have clarity on what the asset is. We get that, and I think you're going to see banks operate in a big way along with other financial institutions. Now, speaking of financial institutions, let's shift gear a little bit and go domestic with the FedNow system. This is a great thread from Molly Elmore talking about the U.S. Central Bank announced this week plans to defer launching a U.S. CBDC, central bank digital currency, as the FedNow service will solve the same issues. Now, I'm going to get this highlight here in a couple spots in the thread. We know that FedNow is a domestic system. Now, we've talked about this on the channel quite often, that the FedNow system is a domestic system, and domestic system does not have any issue with the dollar-to-dollar liquidity. So there really isn't a need for XRP to domestically bridge anything, right? So let's level set at that point. And then seeing here the highlights, sending funds through the U.S. banking system is slow, which creates disruptions in the flow of money. Blockchain technology enables banks to send funds to other banks instantly 24/7. Launching in 2023, FedNow is a payment system offered by the U.S. Central Bank, the Federal Reserve System. Real-time payment use cases, it says here, include transactions where one person sends money to another person through the banking system, payroll, utility bills, tuition, education fees, healthcare costs, credit card payments. Funds settling instantly speeds up flow of money through the economy. I want to point that out because the velocity of money, the speed in which you can move the money from hand to hand, will be very, very important in the near term. I really do believe that, especially what I believe is a downturn not too far from us right now. Payment versus settlement in this context, we have to remember it refers to communication about the transaction. Bank 1 sends information to Bank 2 about the transaction and confirms that Bank 2 will receive the payment. Settlement refers to the exchange of value, which can often mean debiting or crediting a nostro account. So we do want to keep in mind as we have this conversation that payment is not settlement. They are two different things, right? Payment is a message, essentially. Settlement is the actual transferring of value, which Ripple and Net does both, right? We'll keep that in mind. We're going to hear from Ashish Burley in just one second. Let's keep in mind as we talk about this FedNow system also that Valente, Ripple partner, has been chosen to be a member of the U.S. Master Payments Council, as Ripple has as well. So let's not forget that. All right, now let's get back to the thread. There's a couple highlights in the thread that I want to highlight here, and this is a great thread. So Molly, I'm just skipping through this for the sake of covering some important points. It's a great thread. Ripple partner Valente was selected as a participant in the FedNow program, which may mean both RippleNet and Valente will be a part of FedNow once it goes live in 2023. Now, I think this is an important point which means that both may go live in 2023. And if it does, well, if we're talking about XRP for bridging across different currencies, we don't need XRP to bridge there. That's exactly right. But it may play a bigger role than we really realize by getting this domestic system up. And just stay with me here. Central bank digital currencies could be used in FedNow, but so could any stable coin or digital currency approved by the central bank. CBDCs are digital currencies that use smart contracts and are issued directly by the central bank. And we know stable coins could be privately issued or issued by a commercial bank at some point and things of that nature. And this is where I think FedNow is going to serve and play an enormous role going forward. Now, there's one more highlight I wanted to bring up here. I think it was down here, right here. This is Anders. She retweets this Ripple plus Valente plus FedNow, and it just really just reaffirms what we know about that relationship between all three of them. What I want to do now is go to this post right here that I shared, because this really is what I think FedNow can lead us to. This could be why the Fed is delaying a central bank digital currency. FedNow gets up and running. Then we see stablecoin legislation passed in the near term, whether it's by the end of this year in September, as Congressman Patrick McHenry has said, or whether it goes into early next year to get done. If we get that done, I think that stablecoin legislation will be just as important to cryptocurrency as the 1996 Telecommunications Act was for the internet, which really caused the explosion, that Cambrian explosion of people and entities coming into this space. But more importantly, the reason I feel it's so important is because if we get that, what we're talking about is creating enormous, huge domestic liquidity pools. And remember, while the U.S. is working on getting stablecoin legislation straight, so is the EU, so is the Asian region and other areas of the world as well. This would create all kinds of domestic pools. Remember, CBDCs are created by the central banks, and there's only so many of them. So commercial banks, through stablecoin legislation, get the opportunity, hopefully, to create their own stablecoin. This really creates the look. I mean, here's what we have to remember. We're moving to the internet of value. We live in the internet of information today. Everything must be tokenized for the internet of value to work. So whether it ends up being the USD coin, stable coin that 100 banks and thousands of banks use, or whether it ends up being the Bank of America stable coin, it really doesn't matter. What matters is having a stable coin that represents the value that can be moved on this new protocol, new payment network or networks, to be able to participate in the internet of value itself. That's what's important. And I believe the USD coin certainly will end up becoming the retail side for the US digital dollar. I do believe that. It hasn't been crowned that yet, but I do believe it's on its way there. But one thing to remember is what James Wallace told us, head of central bank engagement, is that he said CBDCs, but I'm adding in stable coins, and CBDCs are the native tokens of the XRP ledger. XRP is the bridge, as you can see in this diagram, to all the major currencies here. And what I really see, to put the visual together here, is all of these domestic pools around the world created by the Euro digital dollar, the UK's digital pound, right? The digital yen when it's ready, the Chinese yuan, and all these domestic pools get created. And then these domestic pools get created by organizing it, let's say in the US through the FedNow system and legislation for stablecoins, will create these enormous domestic liquidity pools that can now serve for cross-border for XRP as a bridge currency and an effective use of the internet of value. That's what I believe we're watching unfold. I really do believe that. Now, to add to that, and this point that I'm making here, is this. This is Ashish Birla. And listen to what he says very quickly here when being interviewed about the idea of every bank issuing a stable coin on a blockchain.
The government seems to be also waking up.
Let me just turn this up really quickly here.
To this notion that, hey, listen, we need to get moving here on creating proper regulation. There's also a lot of regulation, at least talk around the stablecoin aspect of it. And how great would it be if every bank in the United States issued a stablecoin on a blockchain? Now that would connect it to real world society and solve real world problems.
Again, so when I think of this, when Ashish Burla says, imagine every bank issuing a stable coin on a blockchain, whether it's USD coin or their own coin, I think to myself, and again, just a quick reminder, just to recap here, we know legislation for stable coins being worked on in the EU, Digital Pound, Digital Euro Foundation, Ripple's on all of it. And we know it's getting worked out. I happen to feel that FedNow domestically gets the system up and running, gets the legislation for stable coins to follow, and we may be off to the races, ladies and gentlemen. We'll keep an eye on that. But when it comes to flipping the switch and what will it take, this is a nice reminder from an interview I did with Bob way back in 2019, former Ripple employee who helped develop a lot of the patents and the war room strategy to really bring Ripple and XRP where it is today and beyond to its ultimate destination. I want you to listen to this clip that Anders has here for us. Take a listen to this and what he says when it comes to what I expect turning the switch is going to be. It's going to be connecting banks to these other payment service providers, PSPs, that are already using XRapid, which is really on-demand liquidity now, right? Product, and going through XRP now and increasing the volume. Now do you understand how important PSP are, right? Payment service providers.
That's what I expect turning the switch is going to be. It's going to be connecting banks to these other payment service providers that are already using the XRapid product and going through XRP now and increasing the volume.
And that's exactly what we see happening around the world with the different 24, 25 corridors that are opened already. And then we know Gary Gensler in this clip made it very clear that in order to really break your way into this monopoly of central banks and commercial banks in this banking financial world, you have to be willing to give something up. Take a quick listen.
Terribly excited about that. Maybe you're going to have to give some ownership. Maybe you'll have to give 50% of your ownership to the 20 banks that are now part of this. I mean, there are other ways to build incentive systems. Maybe you put a native token in there, and you give them the native token. So there may be other incentive ways to beat the current monopolist. But I, having been around commercial banks for a long time, they really are looking for ways to replace their aggregators in their back office, whether it's clearing, settlement, exchanges, credit agencies.
Right. They're looking for ways to upgrade because they know it's antiquated, vulnerable, and it needs to be something new, right? We know that Ripple can do all of these things with the use of their suite of products along with the XRP ledger and the XRP token. One has to wonder this far into the game here if the banks also realized that the SEC would be a great place to take advantage of. Now, I'm speculating here. I don't know. But one would think that Gary came from Goldman Sachs. By the way, so did Jay Clayton, I believe my memory serves me correctly, that you could use and weaponize an agency, in fact, to help barter those agreements for those 20 or so monopoly of banks. One has to wonder. Changing gears really quickly here. I want to touch this because I had a conversation with Fred Rispoli online on Twitter, and I asked a question in this narrowly tailored redaction from Ripple, looking to disclosure would be detrimental to the non-party's legitimate privacy interest in Ripple commercial relationships with them. Could this be to protect all pre-allocated option contract holders? Now listen, pre-allocation is not, that part is not a theory. It's a fact, Jack. R3 did pre-allocated option contract. Greg Kidd did pre-allocation option contract. Now, if you want to speculate as I do, that it is common sense for me to believe that they didn't stop there. They probably did this with a lot of other banks and important financial institutions that had two things that they need: utility and liquidity, right? The ability to make payments and the ability to have huge cash reserves to make those payments. And those largely would be central banks. And if you bring those two things to the utility of the network of XRP Ledger, boy, oh boy, are we going to see fireworks. But right here, it says in redaction here, it would be detrimental to these non-parties involved in the case, basically, legitimate privacy interest and Ripple's commercial relationships with them. Now, I ask this openly to anybody who wants to come out here and help solve this problem or answer this question. And Fred Rispoli come out, and thank you, Fred, for responding, says possible. It doesn't mean that it's a factual, but it's certainly worth considering. And as I've always said, with any working theory that I've presented on my channel, it's on the table until we can take it off the table. Possible. SEC claims XRP has no utility. Ripple could disclose that number of banks and financial institutions have already signed contracts for billions of dollars escrowed or XRP to be executed once non-security status is determined. Protective order for cases prevents SEC from making that public, hence the seal request. Possibility, one plausible possibility, right? That's really what we're talking about here in this case. And we have to remember to back up all of this, and thank you to Fred for that. Certainly appreciate him. And Mickle Markets got it right. Give that guy a follow. Watch out for the speculation police. I tell you, it's unbelievable. Miguel reminds us here in about 30 seconds what the real deal is when it comes to all of this. It really backs up what was just asked for by Ripple to keep their clients' private information private about their relationships, because
we end up putting XRP in different hands, right? Oh. So it starts to proliferate a little bit inside of the ecosystem, so that people then have a vested interest in making it work. Right, so you start to tie those incentives together. Want to be more transparent with what we're doing with the XRP in terms of institutional buyers, if we sell any, if we buy any. I want to start to give the market that clarity. There are some things that I can't do, right? I can't give names to people like that, we've transacted XRP with, because that's not, there's NDAs and there's confidentiality agreements.
See that? They can't talk about it even if they wanted to. And in fact, to some degree, no matter who it is they're dealing with, they are asking in here to keep those things private. And it makes perfect sense. Listen, XRP ain't money unless the world agrees that it's money. And if the world agrees that it's money, you just may be asked to give up some of it, as Gary Gensler proposes here when he was teaching in 18 at MIT. Keep watching for the payment service providers to connect to the banks. That would be the next thing to watch out for. And as we tie all of this in, ladies and gentlemen, and watch out for FedNow to get up and running in some stablecoin legislation to develop some of the biggest domestic liquidity pools that we've ever seen to prepare for the next phase, which would be cross-border and hopefully XRP. Not financial advice from me or anyone else, but that's where we are on this day. I'll catch all of you on the next one.